All righty, everybody. I am super pumped. I know we've been talking about this for a few weeks, and we've finally got him on the show. He's been very patient with us. We've had some conflict with schedules, and we had him scheduled, and then we had to postpone and everything. But he's finally here. Historic wings himself, Thomas Van Hare. How you doing, Thomas? Thank you for finally showing up, and apologize for the delay in getting you here. But we're finally glad to probably meet up with you.
No, it's a great honor to be invited at all. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Great, absolutely. Looking really forward to talk. We talked a few minutes ahead of time. You've got a couple books we're going to talk about. You've got a podcast that you do, some interview. You actually have a very interesting backstory to your life and what you did. There's all kinds of cool stuff that we can get into. So we're going to definitely do that with everyone here. So thanks, everyone, for coming out this week. We do appreciate it. A lot to cover this week. A lot to cover. First things first, right? Because I showed this, I want to show it again. This is your brand new baby, right? This is your new one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the new one. That is indeed just published. What is it? A week ago, roughly.
Right. And so this one, what was the inspiration for creating MAG 23 Guadalcanal?
That's actually the most interesting thing. Firstly, it's the 80th anniversary of Guadalcanal, both last year and this year. And so in the 80th year of this, it's a very timely and sensible game to do. Another is that I have very many old friends within the Marine Corps, and many of them often say that Guadalcanal is not properly taught. It's not understood, even by historians who study it. They don't often understand how difficult it was and what the purpose was. A lot of people get off on the issues about the ground combat and such, but it was really about just defending a very small perimeter around an airfield. And the real reason to hold that airfield was because the air power gave the ability to stop the Japanese advance and begin the island hopping campaign up the Solomon Islands, which ultimately made it all the way to Okinawa and Iwo Jima in the bombing of Japan in 1945. So it's the beginning of the real turnaround. People often talk about Midway as the turning of the tide, but in fact, it was Guadalcanal. That was the first concrete ground holdings that changed the course of the war in the Pacific. So that's why I did it. Now, what happened was I was looking through my research on this topic and came across a soldier's logbook of his experience in the war in Guadalcanal. And I thought, it would be a very interesting thing is to create a game that was logbook based. So whereas a lot of people write after action reports as a kind of a creative writing exercise, in this case, I thought, well, why not just make the logbook, the creative writing part of it, central to the game? It's the centerpiece of the gameplay itself. And so that was really what became.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Cool design. It's obviously well received. A lot of 5 stars there. All right, that is great.
Oh, my one star didn't get on there yet. Yeah, my one star didn't get on there yet.
No.
So here's one thing that's interesting. So I'm a history teacher. I teach high school history, and we actually just finished World War II. So I thought it was interesting that this came out at this time. And what's interesting is that I teach the kids. I teach them how Eurocentric we are, because everybody thinks World War II started in 1939 with the invasion of Poland. And I have to tell them, technically speaking, that is not true. It started in 1932 with Japan invading Manchuria. So the fact that a lot of historians, like you were saying, that historians get Guadalcanal wrong and understand it, that really kind of spoke to me, because it's like everybody thinks that all this really started like in the late 30s, when it actually really all started in early 30s. As for the game, I think I've been looking for logbooks, and you had messaged me. I put on there a message that I was looking for logbooks. He's like, you're in developing one to kind of fit that narrative. And I thought that was the coolest thing for the logbook part. Yeah, the tables are cool and all the blah, blah, but adding the story to the logbook. I thought that was really, really cool because I was reading. I'm like, "Where's the logbook? Where's the logbook?" And then I finally read, "You grab a piece of paper, or you can do it digitally, however you want to do it, and you tell a story." And I love that part. I'm big on storytelling with war games in general. I like to be able to tell the story with it. That's why a lot of times I go for a tactical. And by the way, this is very tactical in that aspect. So I was very impressed from what I can see so far. I'm still beating into it because it's crunchy enough for a solitary game. It's quite crunchy. So, but initial impressions are really, really, really.
Oh,
really,
so
really
Tony,
good.
you've got a copy, yeah?
Yeah, I actually
Oh,
ordered it like Saturday, last show. I ordered it and ended up getting it Monday. So I didn't realize it was that new of a release. Like that was the first week release, and so I started beating it down and really digging into it. And I've watched
cool. Yeah,
Thomas
I mean,
has got some. Thomas
Tally
has got
Ho.
some good video. Yeah, Thomas has
Tally
got some
Ho
good
is
videos.
different. Yeah, he does a good
Yeah.
video. Tally
He
Ho
does.
is another good book. Complete. It's the same combat system, I understand, but it's a completely different thing. It's not going to be. It's not like Thomas has done, and I know I'm shilling a bit, but I've got both, luckily, and I've read them, and I, looking forward to doing a playthrough of Tally Ho because it's on my list. But it's not just taking.
Don't worry, he'll get to it sometime next year.
No, it will be. No, it's up. It's up after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then I've got Point Blank and all that. I've got a plan. But he's not just like Tally Ho taking that and then put another subject and use the same thing. It's the same old, which some people have said. I don't know because I haven't got any. The Worthington games are a little bit like that. They just changed the maps. This is the two things are completely different. One, you print out maps and plane counters. The other one, you don't have to print out anything, but it helps to use these abstract maps that you can place the pieces on to give you the narrative and who's attacking who, and if you split off and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, very impressed for my first books. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. The thing is, the main goal in that was to create a book-based game that had counters, but was not a hex encounter game, where Tally Ho is really a hex encounter game. Yeah. This one is a narrative style game. And the narrative doesn't require any counters whatsoever. You can play it with just the book. You could take it with you with some dice, and you're going to need a place to drop dice because, if you're doing a lot of airplanes, you might be rolling 10 dice on one side and 8 on the other. But
the only problem I had was the dice. Like that, like it has dice, so that's a problem.
Yeah, he's rubbish at dice. That's what he's trying to do. If he had cards, he'd be fine.
Sorry to interrupt, but that was my biggest problem is that I had to roll dice.
The cursed dice issue is really something that is serious for many game players, and this is that kind of game that the dice don't play as big a role. There's a lot of tables with dice, but they establish the circumstances. This is really a very decisive game. It's also an attempt to take the narrative style game away from the current trajectory, which is toward ever more detailed tables. So you're determining, whether you're going to blow the left tire or the right tire when you have an accident on landing, and move it toward a decisive decision-making based game. And even if there are only 3 phases out of 17 that are decisive, they are so decisive and so subtle in their makeup that I'm going to be very surprised if anybody gets it right from the beginning. But I will give you a hint straight up front before you start playing it. This is actually a resource management Euro game.
Yeah,
with
it sure is.
Resources.
I could see that.
Don't tell them grognards that because those sort of games are dumbing down and watering down war games.
I'm going to say this: OCS is a Euro resource management game as well. So,
yeah, but don't tell Kev that.
Oh,
I'm not going to tell Artie that.
I need to cut everyone off so we can get back and focus without you guys getting crazy on me. Let's say hi to all of our fans before you piss them all off and have them
That's
leave.
right.
Extra squeakies in the house. Tim and Alistair and Jeffrey and Steven and Mike Butterjelly's here. And William Bird. Meandering Mike is also in the house. Sean Baldwin, thank you for coming on today. Dwayne Martz, YouTube Network. Thank you. Phoenix Knight. Thank you for coming out. The Blue Tweezers is in the house. Dennis is in the house. Tim, good friend of the channel's in the house as well. Thank you all for coming out. Dave, what is going on? And John Longshore. If I missed your name, I apologize. But thank you all for coming out to talk with Thomas Van Hare. Historic. Now, you got in parentheses, historic wings. Now, a lot of people don't know what that means. Why don't you tell people what that actually means?
Okay. 25 years ago, I began a website. It was one of the very first aviation history websites online. And it was for a long time, actually through the 1990s and into the early 2000s, the most popular aviation history and aviation conflict history, war history website on the web. Then I set it aside for some years and then I relaunched it. But I've written over 450 articles in that. And Historic Wings, in the last 2 years, I started to do videos. And some of those videos are quite popular with 100,000 views and so forth. And I'm often looking for topics that are unknown history, the kind of surprising pieces that people would miss. If you get a chance to look at the YouTube channel, coincidentally by the name of Historic Wings, you can look up, for instance, the video about flight boots. Now, in the Cold War, flight boots in the Cold War doesn't seem like it should be that much of an interesting topic, but effectively the air war over Europe ultimately came down to flight boots.
Is this you?
And that's me. Yeah, that's the website.
I thought
Historic
it was.
Wings.
I thought it was. Right.
Mhm.
It looked like it. I thought, oh my gosh, that is him. I bet you that is. I had to find out for sure. But yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of dedication to your craft. What got you so interested in planes to begin with? Like where does that come from?
Oh.
I mean,
it's my father was an Air Force officer. He flew RB-26Cs in the Korean War. All black at night. One of the first Americans to overfly Red China. Electronics intelligence. They were doing, before the U-2, before the SR-71, we were doing electronics intelligence operations off the coast of China and such, and he was doing that. He was also doing weather reconnaissance, but in the Korean War. So they would fly down the Chinese coast. So, and I was raised with airplanes, and I'm also a pilot. And I was a search and rescue pilot, and I've also flown globally.
John actually was asking if you have your pilot's license. So
yeah, I'm
obviously
commercial, multi-instrument, pretty much everything. I could sit in the right seat of a 777, tomorrow. But I don't do that as a career. I was at one time, believe it or not, the CEO of an airline, but that's another life.
What does it take to get into like this rickety ass plane that's going to go like 100 miles an hour and looks like it's going to fall apart at any second? How much cannolis do you have to get into that sucker?
Is that Blériot? Is that a Blériot copy type plane?
That is a Blériot. That's actually a friend of mine who owns 2 of them and flies them here in Sweden. He lives about a half an hour from me. He flies them. Aerodrome.se is, I think, the website. But he's also built a Fokker triplane and a Fokker D7 and a Pfalz. And what he does is he manufactures in his garage exact duplicates to factory drawings with the real engines, actual World War I and pre-World War I aircraft.
Brilliant.
So he's quite a pilot. And yeah, that is one of those kind of aircraft that when you can see the tops of the trees, you're kind of safe because you're not going to crash into the trees anymore.
Is that hence the term flying by the seat of your pants? comes from.
Yeah, and there's no floor underneath the Blériot because the fabric might start weighing down the airplane too much. So if you look down in the cockpit, you're looking down past your feet at the ground.
Oh God, no way, no way.
Wow,
No way.
that's I've been saying for years on this channel, like World War One pilots were insane, like insane. I mean, without a parachute or anything going up, I mean, that is like wow. I couldn't even imagine that.
What, the 20-minuters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those aircraft, they really didn't. You could often just barely fly them. And of course, as the war went on, 1916, you started to see more powerful aircraft. 1917, 1918, you started really seeing quite reliable and powerful airplanes. But early on, you had aerial combat was brand new. I mean, they were shooting at each other with handguns and throwing bricks at each other and dropping bricks from one airplane to the other. And the first guy to do a leaflet drop was a German pilot in a Rumpler Taube, which is this quite rickety, like a Blériot look like, except the wings look a bit like a bird's wings with feather-like things sticking off the wingtips. And he flew it over Paris, and he had a knapsack of surrender, we are coming, written in French, which he was going to drop over the city of Paris. And he held it out in the airstream to empty it out and drop the bag. Anyway, all the leaflets stayed in the bag. So the bag just sort of dropped and hit the ground and broke open.
That's too funny. That is too good. Oh my God. That is awesome. All right, so let's get this debate started because this won't cause any problems. Best World War II plane, in your opinion. Now, you're an expert. You are an expert. You are people look up to you. So don't get this wrong, Thomas. I'm leaving it up to you. Best plane in World War II.
Okay, best is I have a question for you then. What is your definition of best?
Yeah.
Best for what?
Best
Because
what,
different planes were designed to do different things.
Best fighter plane of World War II.
Best fighter plane of World War II.
Yes.
Dave Tomko has it.
I would have to say operational fighter plane. I would actually probably have to say that it is the Me-262 twin jet fighter from Germany.
It was just a little late for the war.
Just a little bit late and not enough of them, but that it makes a Mustang really look like, a Model T.
I'm going to show you something because there's only two people in this whole world that would understand what I'm going to show you, but I'm going to show it to you anyways because I think it's important.
Isn't there reports of pilots when the 262 came out and they're flying along, suddenly this thing went and they what the heck's that, so
yeah, and we have this idea, this strange thing that goes through our head, well, I was doing 400 miles an hour and he was doing 470 miles an hour, and we're like, well, it's not that much of a difference. Well, that's like standing on the side of a highway and a car blasts past you at 70 miles an hour, 110 kilometers an hour. And you're standing there trying to take a shot at it. Look at that.
This is something I had gotten like 25 years ago, but it's actual signatures from German World War II aces from the Me-262 and their accomplishments and stuff like that.
What are the names that are on there?
There are. Are you ready for this? Major Erich Rudendorfer, Lieutenant Hermann Buchner, and Oberthaus Walter Schurk, Schurck.
That's cool.
And there was 12
beautiful
victories
piece
with an Me-262 from Major Erich von Rauffender. Lieutenant Hermann Buchner had 12 victories in the Me-262, and Oberthaus Walter Schurk 8 victories with an Me-262. Cool. You don't see many of these around anymore.
No,
you don't. That's and we're not getting any more of them because all those guys have passed away.
Right.
You know, back in the 80s, I had really good luck to meet a lot of those guys, Adolf Galland, Gunther Rahl, and
Yes, I've got a
in
bunch
fact,
of signed stuff from Gunther Roll as well. Yeah, I
yeah, he
collected
was
all that
quite a
stuff growing up. So yeah, I had spent lots and lots of money on that stuff a long time ago, and
Yeah.
you know, this is back in the 80s and 90s when, you know, there was still a few of them that were alive. I think Gunther Roll lived till he was 100 or to 100. He lived till 2004, I think, is when he died. Gunther Roll. I'm trying to remember.
something like that.
Anyways, we can talk. I love this stuff. You know, I got all my planes here in my room. I love planes. It's like my favorite thing to talk about. We could talk. We might just have to have a 4-hour show today, people. 4-hour show.
I thought you'd like it. Well, you better get these. Then Jester, you better get these then, because you're gonna, you know, you're gonna love them.
Yeah, you would. Just yeah, definitely.
You'll
I
like
agree.
them. You like them.
I've got to get Tally Ho.
Specifically, I was going to do it after Tony said that he was going to get it, and he got his. And I know he emailed me and said that he got it or posted on our Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally had it in my cart, and I said, you know what? I am not going to get it until after I talk with him, because I don't want him to come in on the show feeling like there's a lot of pressure that, oh, we got his game now and we're going to critique it. And, you know, so I kind of wanted to put it low key. So
No, I don't critique.
I tend to have an opinion once in a while on things. And then
Once in a while,
just a little bit. But no, I don't critique. I just play the game. And if you want to see what's in the book, there should be an unbooking and open the book for Mag 23 next week. This video, they've just got to edit it. So,
and I will say, I love the fact that you put all the stuff also on BGG to print out, so that we don't have to ruin the book.
I mentioned that, and I give the links as well. What a nice chap I am.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
So I mean, it's really cool, because then you can just print them out and keep. You know, you don't have to ruin the book or anything like that.
And their book backwards. Yeah, no.
Mine's actually in my book bag, because I've been taking it to school and reading through it.
Books in your book bag, Tony?
Yeah.
You sound like a kid.
It's in my teacher bag.
Right.
Lunchtime and stuff like that. So yes.
What with your Sarnies?
So what? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying the book-based war games side is a very interesting new segment of the marketplace. You know, we used to have.
That was going to be my question. Is kind of where, instead of saying, you know, oh, I'm going to create a game, you said, oh, I'm going to create a book game. So obviously you went down that path. So take us down that path. What was the decisions that you came across? Like, for anyone out there that might be thinking, oh, you know, I could make a book game. You know, you obviously went through the process. You've went through over the hurdles and all that. So what can someone expect if they're thinking about, oh, I'm going to create a book game?
I mean, it's a very interesting question. It's very easy. And most of the big challenges of publishing a game go away. You don't have to worry about warehousing and print run length and importing from China and getting the card stock right. And now the offset printing was wrong and the color matching wasn't good. And I know how to do all of that, which is exactly why I didn't want to do it.
Those are triggering words right there.
Don't mention color matching.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly why I didn't want to do that, because as a designer, you're not in control. You can do whatever you want. You can send files with perfect, you know, CMYK separations and everything else, and the guy putting it on the press puts on the wrong ink or uses a cheap, you know, the wrong paper. You can specify the papers and they'll use the wrong paper, and you get back, you know, 1,000 copies of something and it's wrong. And so it's extremely frustrating, the process of printing on paper. Printing games is I think much greater of a challenge than printing a book. And printing a book through Amazon is easy. You upload a PDF, you create your cover, and they take care of the rest. And the quality is pretty good, as long as you select the top quality. Wow. You have to select the very top quality options, because the lower quality options really do not, they don't work for this kind of thing.
Right.
but the top
right.
quality options are quite good, and the color
Because
matching isn't bad.
It's got to be quality because you're constantly doing this with it. You're constantly looking backwards and forwards. So it's got to be of a quality it doesn't fall to bits.
And so, if you can create a game and you can send it to Amazon, it will be online for sale. The thing is, because it's easier to print these kind of things, it also means it's an invitation to a lot of, very poorly made games, which is what I'm worried about. And everybody, I
Right.
think
Right.
the market sorts itself out pretty quickly. It's same thing in the print and play community. The market sorts itself out very quickly. So I would advise any game designer to give it a shot. Go into printing your own book-based games. And we're still learning in this field. I'm trying to push the limits of what you can do in a book-based game, and make them more like full boxed. These are basically a full boxed war game without the counters and maps.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, though, you do need baggies, Jester. All right.
Oh, okay. Well, that's it. You can't get baggies anywhere.
Yeah.
Here in Sweden, it's like Baggies or Us is a store on the corner, and we get boxes of baggies, 100 count, 1,000 count baggie boxes of all size. So if you want, you come to Sweden, you can find what you need.
What do they need so many baggies for, Thomas? In Sweden, what are they up to?
Wow. You're in Sweden, right, Thomas? Where in Sweden are you located?
I'm in the south, not very far from Malmö, in a town called Kristianstad, which is spelled Christianstad, and but it's pronounced Kristianstad or Kristianstad because it's Danish. But of course, when I went to Denmark and I asked them how they pronounce it, they said Kristianstad. So it's like,
That's bonkers. Those languages are bonkers. They all mix.
So what are you doing in Sweden then? You're from Michigan. You're a Michigan guy.
Unfortunately,
but the environment is just the same. In fact, Michigan and Sweden are very similar. This is closer to Afghanistan, so it's a good place to base out
of. Okay. We're going to give Thomas a break here. We're going to talk to Ruff and Tony. You guys got some stuff in this week, right?
I got a crap load.
What did you get in this week? Let's talk about it.
Well, first thing I got in was Guadalcanal. Fittingly, I didn't even plan it this way. It just happened to work out. I put this on because I wanted
Guadalcanal, Tony.
Yeah. I got this from our good friend of the show, Brian, and I was only 2 modules short of playing this. This being the most important one. So I picked it up. I looked at it on eBay and I was like, oh, I'm interested. So I put it in like my Keep a Watch. And like the next day they're like, hey, we'll sell it to you for this and free shipping. And it was like $10. I got it for like $30.
Wow,
so
good,
I was like, yeah. So that worked out. Then I got a couple of Kickstarters in, which was pretty cool. So I got the Downfall of Empires by Do It Games. And then its sister game, which is Downfall of the Third Reich. Now, since I got them, they're hard-mounted boards, so that's pretty quick. That's pretty cool. But since I got it with the Kickstarter, they actually have the neoprene mats as well.
I love the neoprene mats. I love them.
Yep. So, like, I can do this, and then you guys don't have to look at my ugly mug. But, yeah. No, I got one for each of the games, so that's pretty cool.
Wow, that is awesome.
And then one last one was, I had mentioned this earlier. Well, like, how does Tony spend your money? Well, I got the Solo Stalingrad. This is just shipping out Revolution Games.
Revolution, yeah.
Yep. And this is volume 1, so there's going to be multiple. I broke this out today, just kind of looking at it. I'll be able to put this to the table and start playing it probably within a day or so. The rules are pretty straightforward. Looks like lots of decisions. So when it comes to decisions in a solo game, like I was talking about, Thomas, this looks like there's plenty of it there to do. So it's not one of those ones that's on rails. So But yeah, that's what I got. So it's like all of it. The Kickstarter was delayed. I finally got it, but I missed the hey, we need money for shipping, so I had to deal with that back in January, and they finally got it to me. And the quality is phenomenal. It looks really, really good. There's enough unboxings of those. I'm not gonna bore anybody. I'm just gonna get them to the table.
I haven't seen an unboxing, Tony. Do an unboxing, you lazy so-and-so.
We're waiting on your unboxings, Ruff.
Well,
you've been promising us Tally Ho for months now. I mean, come on.
I've done the unboxing. I've done the unboxing for that. I've done the unboxing. And you're asking me what I got in. Of course, I got that in. And the
I got that in too, but I just didn't have it. I don't have it with me, but yeah, I got that one too.
Got the unbooking. Open the book on that, so you can see it's so different to Tally Ho. It's incredible.
Well,
incredible.
It's just different to all the box game. Now, I do like that. It depends on the mood I'm in on which book games that I like. So because they're all different.
But the good thing, Tally Ho, okay, it's the Battle of Britain, so it's the Battle of Britain. Yeah, you've got different scenarios. This one,
what was that again? I've never heard of it before.
The Battle of Britain.
It's
a little thing that went on 94. It's a little island somewhere. Thank goodness. I think, well, we'd be speaking German now anyway. With the other game though, it can be. You can go up against aircraft. You can go up against land units. You can go up against ships. It's all in there in Mag 23. It's really good. 23, yeah. So I've also got. I did put a picky on the old tack up. Tony and Uncle Brian put me onto a chap that was sending some Panzer Grenadier stuff that I needed for stuff that Uncle Brian sent me, some supplements that needed extra games, and he was selling them for quite a good price. So I got Road to Berlin.
Ooh, that's a
That's
good
one
one.
of the key to a lot of the expansions.
Yeah. But the Panzer Grenadier.
It's got the marmalade maps too, doesn't it, Rob?
I know it'll go with me Eastern Front. So anyway, unfortunately, when you mix it with that one.
Oh yeah, the boards are. That's got the hard boards.
I don't care.
I don't care either.
I tell you what, 70-odd, 50-odd scenarios in each box. I mean, it's crazy. I do love me Panzer Grenadier, so that's all I got in really.
Between ATS and Panzer, I probably have more games than I'll be able to play with the scenarios.
The stuff that Uncle Brian sent me, I'm never going to get through it. There's some in there. There's one called Sinister something or other, and it's about the NKVD and the the Waffen SS. The atrocity. So that looks good. There's one with sort of peasants fighting. That looks good as well. And I can play some of those now. I've got those two games. So
yeah. It seems like Desert Rats, Battle of the Bulge, Road to Berlin, and East Front are your four key ones that you need to make sure you get those editions.
For the old supplements that are all out of print now.
Yeah. So, the East Front was split into two games that you get for the now you get for the modern, which is I can't remember two, but there's two games now that split that game up. So, but I saw that they're back. I saw the Eastern Front's back down the price into like a normal price, but it's Sinister Forces, Rough. That's
Sinister Forces. That's the one. Yeah. And also, he sent me the one you've got where you turn it into an RPG.
Oh yeah. Oh that's. Yeah. I got you. Yeah, that one. The Africa one. The Africa one. Yeah.
You sort of work your leaders through. You become the leader and work your way through. As a sort of semi RPG thing, which I thought was rather cool. So yes.
When are we going to have the time to play?
Awesome.
Never.
Awesome.
Never.
Thomas, do you play other games? What games does Thomas play?
I know because he keeps messaging me about Spruance-Leader.
Oh, you play Spruance-Leader.
I've got Spruance-Leader. I have actually quite a number of games. I submitted my top 10 list on your TAC
Oh, okay. How many have you completed so far?
I have all of those on my shelf, and I've completed one so far. So, but I couldn't help but complete it. So,
a lot of mine were smaller games. I'll be honest with you. A lot of my 6 were my smaller games.
Tony cheated because he already had a game done before he posted his list. So I think we're going to null and void him anyways. So
yeah.
I've got enough games that I'm going to have played.
You do non-war games, Thomas?
I have, yes, and I have quite a range of those as well. I've been playing war games and regular board games since the 1960s. And I know that sounds crazy, but
You don't look old enough,
then-
Thomas.
You don't look. Yeah,
Right.
honestly, you
Yeah.
No
don't.
way.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah, I'm an
So-
old guy. And in the 1970s, I was playing, and I even did role playing back then.
Yeah, we all did then,
Starting-
didn't we? Yeah.
Starting with the chainmail system, and
Oh yeah.
so-
Wow, that is
Yeah.
old, right?
Yeah, and so I go all the way back in that. But
you go back
my
to
first
play
air
lots of
games were,
different games.
I think my first air games were Richthofen's War and Air Force Dauntless with the expansion kit. And I still sometimes play that.
Luftwaffe.
It's a great game.
There is a
Luftwaffe as well.
ton.
We had it, but I didn't play it much.
There's a ton of air combat games out there, all the way back to the 70s, 80s, 90s. They just released Storm Above the Reich and all that series coming out. If there's a game or a series that you would recommend to budding avionics enthusiasts, is there like one game that you go, oh, this is what I would recommend for you?
There's so many now.
Yeah.
Besides his,
Sorry.
I knew that he wasn't.
Nice one. Nice
thing
one.
is-
Nice one there,
For the longest time, we were doing war games, air war games, with the idea that you would compete aircraft against each other in dogfights. And since you really want a fight to be even-sided, that you end up with 4 Spitfires against 4 Messerschmitts and things like that. And that's all fine and good, and it's good for gameplay, but it's not actually realistic to history. Because the truth is, you don't want to fight a war. You don't want to fight a fair fight in war.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have overwhelming odds against the other side. So the vast majority of combats, whether on the ground, at sea, or in the air, are overwhelmingly weighted for one side or the other. And there aren't very many games that can capture that at all. And certainly the maneuver your airplane around and move and shoot games, you really have to kind of presuppose that it's an even sides, and again, that just doesn't really happen. We don't want to fight a war if we can't win it. That's
right.
That's why when it's interesting when people complain about balance on a war game. I'm like, wait a second. You don't fight a war balanced. You don't want to.
That's why I love Eastern Front, because
Yeah.
some of them are so unbalanced. There's 100 odd scenarios. They're all unbalanced, but that's how it was.
Yeah.
So you fight the Russians, to try and get a better score than you did last time.
So to me, that's where victory conditions need to be adjusted for that. Instead of making a fair game, let's make hey, did you do better than the historical standards? And what I find with a lot of games, and this happens in the American Civil War, and I've talked about this before, is that nobody actually plays the entire Civil War because we're not that stupid. We had the slowest general on earth for the Union starting out the war, that was scared of his own shadow and every rumor that came out. And so that GMT, the American Civil War, everybody I've talked to said it was done in 2 years, and the Union always won. I've never heard it any other way. And a lot of it, so yeah. So it's one of those things. I think victory conditions need to be adjusted for that. If you're playing 2-player, if you're playing solo, you almost have to take the side that's down, or the unbalanced
you have
side.
to take the underdog. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any opinions? This is a question from a viewer now. This isn't for me. Down in Flames series of games or the Wings of War minis games? What have you have any thoughts or opinions on those? Again,
I've only seen them.
Okay.
I've never played them myself. I love the way they look. I mean, I love airplanes and I love airplane models, and I think that they capture that very well. And I think that's really important, because that's an important side of this. It's like if I'm going to play.
Go ahead.
If I'm going to play a Sherman tank game, I want the Sherman tank dice tower. That you drop the dice on the top of the turret.
So Thomas, where I teach is actually an aviation school. We actually teach aviation mechanics, and we're building into pilots due to the not the graying of the hobby in this case, but the graying of the industry, because there's a lot of baby boomers that are retiring. So there's a lot of good jobs out there. So I work for a career tech school. So I teach history, I teach the core, but so I've played both of those, the Wings at War minis, the Battle of Britain. And what's nice about that one is you have to program ahead. So what you're going to do next has already been decided, even if you don't want it to happen. So there's a little bit of, so it's great, which is generally, I think you can't really pre-plan. Okay, I'm going to do this as I'm flying and fighting. You're like, I'm going to go this way. Well, shit, there he went that way. So now
you can't change because that's what you've decided.
Because that's what you just did. So I really do like that. And the Down in Flame series, I had what was it? F-15 versus a MiG-20. Oh God, I don't know. But these guys just kept going at it and then resetting it and going at it because the MiG guy was like, I'm going to take this guy down no matter what I'm going to do. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I actually recommend very highly those games. Those two games, they're a lot of fun. And the Wings of War is straightforward. Once you figure out, it's great. It's a lot of fun. But again, like you said, it's not very balanced because generally it's 3 Messerschmitts versus 3 Hurricanes or 3 Spitfires, and that just didn't happen. Now, I will say that they each of the decks for the Wings at War are specific for those planes. So the Messerschmitts can do stuff that the Spitfires can't, and vice versa. So they do kind of make it asymmetrical, giving them their kind of negatives and positives. So you kind of do get a little bit more realistic, but like generally it was 1-on-4. If history serves me right, it was like 1 Spitfire against 4 Messerschmitts because they just couldn't get the people up in the air fast enough.
But that's
my uncle was. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go on. I'll say in a minute.
My uncle was in the 354th Fighter Group, flying out of Boxted in England. He was actually a chief armorer, and later worked with a guy by the name of Major Howard, James Howard. He's the only fighter pilot in the ETO that was awarded the Medal of Honor because he was separated from the rest of the fighter group and saw the bomber stream and flew up alongside it and called them on the radio, and they said, you're just one airplane. And he said, well, I'm here to defend you. And then straight ahead, some miles, they saw 40 German airplanes forming up. And the bomber guys thought, we've had it. And he said, I'll take care of them, boys. And he put the throttle forward and won against 40. Made 7 passes through the formation. Shot
that
down
sounds like
That
sounds like a game right there. That really sounds.
Is that in your book? Is that in your book?
Yeah,
I want to.
That's your next book game right there. Yeah.
Come on now, Thomas. Is that in your
I'm
book?
I'm actually going to do the 354th.
Are you?
Do
Okay.
that. I am. That's we're going to do that at the Battle of Bulge, though. One of the little known things is the Battle of the Bulge had an air component that is not usually discussed much because originally
it was only
the
for.
weather was
Yeah, because it was really bad weather, so it was only there for a little bit. But yeah. I had heard. I remember that the Germans were happy that the weather was so bad that the air because they didn't have air superiority at all at that time, so the air was just wide open for any of the Mustangs to come in and just annihilate them.
And it wasn't quite wide open, but it was quite challenging for the Germans. Without a doubt. And when when the weather broke, it was open season on German tanks and infantry, supply positions and railheads and everything else.
This has always bugged me because getting it, flying a plane at 400 miles an hour, right? 350 to 400 miles an hour. But I mean, normally when you're trying to shoot a tank, you're normally diving, so your speed's going to be a little bit higher. How in the hell were they so accurate at shooting these tanks? I just don't understand it. Tanks are not the easiest thing to hit, especially when they're moving. And then you're moving, The tank's moving. You got to line it up. You can't see out of your cockpit because you got a big nose of your plane. So you can't see below that. I mean, how in the hell do these guys do that? I don't understand.
I will say that a lot of the tanks are on roads, especially during the Battle of the Bulge, because the weather was so bad. So they actually lined them up so you could actually line your plane up with the road as you're coming down and just go right down the road. Yeah, it's a little bit harder when they're like out in the fields, but if they're in the roads, yeah, it's right down. So you can actually kind of line it up that way. But still, the fact you're going 500 plus miles an hour, probably going in that dive and like literally scraping the ground as you're coming up, it's insane.
The thing that gets me is how somebody can land on an aircraft carrier that's moving and wind going across and you're coming in. That's, to me, is like, get out of it. You're mad.
The deck is going up and down like this also.
Yeah, it's doing all this and, doing that as well. And zero law, no.
I was watching somewhere. Okay, so I've got my date myself here. Top Gun I was a kid when Top Gun came out, right, and it made me want to be a fighter pilot. Obviously, that did not happen.
That's what I wanted to be, but what have I got? I've got colorblind.
Yeah.
So it's like,
you're colorblind and I can't see. So but I did all this research and watched all these interviews with like pilots for aircraft carriers, and they said during the day it's actually kind of fun, and there's a competition to see who can land the best on those, with that. But they say at night, that is like white knuckling all the way in. They said that's the worst. So, okay, Mike.
All kudos to them, because my goodness.
Yeah, I always enjoy being around war gamers because I'm generally the youngest one, and I'm 45, so I'm not that young. I'm not a spring chicken.
You're 45? Oh my God,
yeah,
Tony!
I'm 45.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would head over to the doctors if I was you.
To answer the question of how you strafe, because I actually know the answer to this. What you want to do is you take your chewing gum and you put it on the windshield. And that's your aiming point. And you point the nose of the airplane toward the target down the road. You pull the trigger and you see where your bullets are landing. And you mash the rudders back and forth, left and right, to kind of move them around the cross until you have it right. That is literally what you're doing. You dynamically correct. And you can really do a lot of damage that way.
So in the film,
but I was a search and rescue pilot. So we used to do airdrops, and I could do an airdrop on a target, a raft. You don't want to hit the raft with something, to drop out of your airplane because you're going to kill somebody. But then if they're really in bad shape, they don't have enough strength to even row 5 feet.
Right.
Right. So you've got to
want to get it close
within like 1 or 2 meters, and we could do that 95% of the time.
I mean, I'm just saying, so in these war films, when they come down the strafe and it's a perfectly long, nice straight and they hit everything, you don't see them doing this, do you? You don't see them yawing or whatever as they come in. So, yeah, I'll be looking out for that next time.
As you roll in and come down, you better be in a slip, mashing the rudder to make the plane point in a different direction than the direction you're actually heading. So when the guys are leading you with their guns, they're actually pointing at the wrong spot and so forth. And you want to create compound angles and curves as you dive in. There's a lot of things that you do that that you don't see really represented in a 6-sided hex war game. There's a lot. So.
Yeah, I think it's always, it's not bugged me, but it's always like how these pilots can knock these tanks out. And I played the online airplane game what is it called?
War Thunder.
War Thunder. Yeah, sorry. I played War Thunder, and I've come in and I've shot tanks out, but it's a game, right? It's supposed to be a game. It's not that easy. I'm like, there's no way it's that easy.
No.
That's my thought.
Chewing gum.
If you put the pipper on the target,
Chewing gum.
You pull the trigger, right?
And you pull the trigger. The bullets are going around there, so it's just a matter
you
of
also have the angle of your plane coming in. You have the curvature of the earth. You have the the bullets don't just go out, right? They go out and then they drop. So you got all that to worry about. I mean, it's a lot.
With modern gun sights, though, if you put that pipper right on the target and you pull the trigger, it's going pretty much right there. And the thing is a lot of people don't understand this about all of these kind of ground attack profiles. It's actually instrument flying. This is not seat of the pants stuff. It's not Top Gun. It's instruments. You better hit the IP at the right speed, pitch up at the right angle, roll over, pull down at the right angle. You better be right on your numbers and drop at precisely the right altitude and everything else so that you pull out. Because when you're pulling out, if something doesn't drop off the airplane and you were dropping a little bit low, you may not pull out.
Right.
So there's a lot of issues there. It's you play it by the numbers and you play it by safety, but it is instrument flying, and a lot of people don't realize that it's basically instruments.
Right.
In
practice, you do this enough times, how fast you're supposed to go, what angle you're supposed to go at, and you just do that over and over and over again. So, oh shit, I'm at 12 degrees. I need to be at 14 degrees. You just autocorrect to 14 degrees because that's what you're trained to do.
Yeah. Doing search and rescue flying, we would routinely hold our altitude within 10 feet and hold the heading within 1/4 of a degree and do that for 7 hours straight. You just get so used to flying the profile.
So search and rescue, it's civilian rescue, search and rescue.
Yep.
And you were flying.
You're working with the Coast Guard and with the U.S. Navy. Mm-hmm.
You're flying a chopper?
No, fixed wing, flying O2s and Skymasters. And we were flying at 500 feet generally, which is the absolute best altitude to do search and rescue spotting. And we discovered actually that the frigate birds also know that that's the best altitude to spot fish, because you'd run into them.
Right.
Nature got there first. Yeah. Well, of course, that would make sense. The guys that going with the nature thing, the gentleman that designed the Spitfire used a bird as an example to create.
He was sitting on the south coast and watching seagulls. Yes.
Yep. There's a movie about it. I know that.
Yeah, that's quite a designer. One of the videos that I'm preparing for Historic Wings is actually a series of retrospectives. What happens if you take modern computational fluid dynamics programs and apply them to the design not of a new airplane but of a Spitfire or a Mustang? And how could modern CFD do better than R.J. Mitchell in designing the Spitfire?
No, it was no.
Uh-oh. You're going to start some controversy, Thomas.
No,
you know that,
know,
right? Every Brit out there thinks the Hurricane and the Spitfire are God's gift to humanity.
Well, they are. If you're in this
they're God's gift to Britain, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Now, okay, so let's talk about that. Thomas, you're an expert now, right? You've researched, you've read, you are the expert. Will you explain to Ruff why he's not speaking German right now?
Because of radar.
What was the reason the Luftwaffe failed in their mission?
Because of radar and range. They could not, and it's actually written up in the Tally Ho book with quite extensively. The history, the real history of the conflict is written there with a lot of examples as to why it was. And the game is designed to actually recreate that, so that even with inferior numbers of aircraft, you can come out on top because it reflects exactly how radar worked. You have the ability to intercept them when you want and where you want, but they can't see you until you come within range.
And also, they haven't
got some far to go, have they? Let's get into it now, boys. Here we go. We just got done talking about it. When the Germans sent their attack squadrons over, they're not sending 6 planes over, right? They're sending 60, 160 planes over at a time. So I don't care if you scramble a squadron because you got radar. Your little 12 planes, it's still 12 versus 160.
Yeah, but it's the 12 best. It's like that American chap against the 40 odd, 40 odd planes.
And that's true in the beginning, right? That's true in the beginning,
Sure.
but because of, the pilots, limited pilots having to run 8 missions a day, wear and tear on the planes, wear and tear on the pilots, they just ran out of time.
Thank God
And the Germans should have won. Huh?
Thank God they started bombing cities, because Downing said it gives us time to recoup. If they'd carried on bombing the airfields, we'd have lost.
It's quite possible, One of the things that is not widely discussed, the Germans did have radar, and they used it actually in night fighting quite well. But the principle of how they managed the radar is quite different than how the British did it. And the Germans never fully appreciated the methodology that the British brought to the table with sector tables. The Germans thought that you would connect the radar to 1 or 2 or 3 pilots and give them specific directions to a specific airplane at night. So there was no strategic view of the battle space. They were using it as a tactical only. And they never understood that right to the end of the war.
Yeah. That wasn't that the unique thing, the big thing, pushing all the planes. That was a unique British thing, wasn't it? So you could see the whole plan and see what was going on. Also, we were fighting for our country, which gives us an edge, and we didn't have so far to go.
I think the Americans were there fighting for you. Yeah.
No, not in the early. No,
not in Battle Britain.
Where were you in 1940? Get out of here.
Here's the thing. We didn't. The Americans didn't understand radar and appreciate radar until after Pearl Harbor. That, even though the Brits had been using it for years very effectively, they thought it was just a toy until after Pearl Harbor, when they realized, oh crap, we missed this. So, take it for what it is. The Brits were ahead of us on the radar. Yeah.
Yeah, we studied the British quite extensively.
You're saying, oh, the Americans this. I always remember John Wayne in The Longest Day giving a pep talk to his men, saying, these Brits have been doing it for 3 years, So there you go. That's John Wayne.
Right.
Don't go wrong.
Didn't you guys ever watch Pearl Harbor, the movie Pearl Harbor? Right? Before they go to Pearl Harbor, they were over in England, and he gets shot down in England. Do you guys not remember that? There was Americans over there. Tell them there was Americans over there for the Battle of Britain.
There was some American Canadians, yes.
It was either 6 or 8. I wrote it into the tally ho book. There's either 6 or 8.
Six
made a difference. Yeah. Oh, God bless them. Yeah. God bless them, because there were some Americans that came over and fought for us and joined the RAF. They were but there weren't thousands, not like in 43, 44, so
43, 44, 45.
The actual story is that the British wouldn't have won if it hadn't been for the foreign pilots coming to volunteer.
Polish pilots,
Polish, Czech, French, even Norwegian.
We were running out of pilots. Yeah.
Straight of the best. That's right, nerd. That's right.
Get out of
there
here.
You go, baby. There you go. That's what
I'm
talking about.
Threw Ruff's words back in his face. I love it.
No, God bless him.
Yeah. I have a test for you guys. I was told that I'm allowed to do this. I have an aircraft identification test for you.
We're going to get to that in just a moment. Because
whenever
do that,
I'm ready.
Before we do that, we're going to do Ruff's remembers. Ruff is ready to remember today in history.
Have you still lost
Thomas, do you know of anything that happened today in history?
Yeah, there's a few things, but I think Ruff is probably the best one.
Okay.
Don't you get Thomas to preempt me? Stop it now.
All right,
Ruff's got the British voice that makes it sound elegant.
We've already set this up in the chat. Thomas is going to ask you some questions, and we're going to see how smart you guys are here in a second. Before we do that, though, Ruff remembers.
Have you got my picture?
Do I need your picture?
Yeah, you get your one up.
Yeah, I'll get your picture.
That's the one with the book that's upside down. Is that?
It's the one with the book that's upside down.
I do it to wind them up.
Hang on, I need to go find it now. Ruff remembers. Where are you, Ruff?
I'll get it myself. I have to do it every week. I'll get it. Have you got it? Jesus, the professionalism.
That's not going to work.
That's
is it?
not it, is it?
I hate SteamYard's new window management system. Have you guys tried it?
Do you want it? Here we go. There we are.
Thank you, Ruff. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, the book that's upside down.
I know it winds everybody up, so that's why I've done it.
He's got a couple upside down. So,
yeah. So what's happening here? 18th of Feb, 1745. Bonnie Prince Charlie, his troops occupy Inverness in Scotland. And by the way, Jester, can you say Strath for me?
Strafe.
Can you say Clyde?
Clyde.
Can you say Strathclyde?
Strathclyde.
Strathclyde.
Lovely. Right. Remember that tonight when you do your live playthrough. Right.
Strathclyde. Now, why the hell would they call something Strathclyde? What the hell is a Strathclyde?
It's an old Nordic thing. Don't worry about it.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What a pain in the ass.
It's older than 400 years. So don't worry. It's, anyway.
Strathclyde.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Don't milk it.
So we have Scotland, we have England, and we have Strathclyde.
Well, Strathclyde is a region of Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
1745. Bonnie Prince Charlie's troops occupy Inverness in Scotland. Now, a little bit about him. Charles Edward Stuart, the Young Pretender, or Bonnie Prince Charlie, as he was popularly called, was the grandson of the old Catholic King James II of England, deposed in the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Born into exile, both he and his father, James Edward, the Old Pretender, continued to maintain their claim to the British throne. In 1745, on today, the prince led the Jacobite rebellion against the British throne in his father's name. Initially, he had the support of the French, this made me laugh, of the French naval force to invade, but he got swept away by a storm. So on his own, the prince continued on and landed in Scotland with his army and raised some more fighters where the Stuarts still had a strong support. So the prince's forces, so that's where they landed in Inverness. The prince's forces marched on and took Edinburgh, not Edinburgh, all right, Edinburgh, before turning south for London. Now, it's a long way from Edinburgh to London. They reached Derby, which was about sort of that much, before turning back to Scotland. The prince's support began to fade and his remaining forces were defeated at the Battle of Culloden, which you may have heard of, in 1746. Pursued by British troops, the prince then evaded capture for 5 months, aided by local people, evidently disguised as a woman, before escaping to France. His later life was a disappointment. He lived a life mostly of drunkenness and debauchery. Sounds like mine, as I'm on the tablets now. And his much younger wife left him amid claims of domestic abuse. Despite this bitter end, Bonnie Prince Charlie's reputation as a popular romantic hero continues in Scotland to this day. They see him through rosy-tinted spectacles.
Rose-colored glasses, yep.
Yeah, so that's old Bonnie Prince Charlie. 1814, we had in the Napoleonic Wars, we had the Battle of Montereau. In 1846, Secretary of the Navy, this is you guys, George Bancroft, issued the general order to change larboard to port for identification of the left side of the sailing vessel.
Larboard. It's over to the larboard.
Why on earth would you call it larboard and starboard? You can tell why there was lots of shipwrecks, can't you? Turn to starboard. No, starboard.
It's like when you name your twins almost the same name. Why would you do that?
Yeah. So, you finally cottoned on and called it port. Do you know why? Another thing, nothing related, just come to my mind. The word posh comes from. It's always very posh. Do you know where it comes from?
No.
It's a ship thing because you bought the best tickets because of the where you were going, because of where the sun was. You didn't want the sun in your eyes all the time, so you went port side out, starboard side home. Posh.
Oh.
So you didn't have the sun in your eyes all the time. So
And only the rich people could pay that for that.
Only
right?
that's why the word posh. Oh, it's very posh. Yeah. 1865. In order for the CSS Charleston, Chicora, Palmetto State not to be captured by Rear Admiral John A. Dahlgren's squadron during the evacuation of Charleston, South Carolina, Confederate Captain John R. Tucker orders the ships to be set afire and blown up. That's he meant that, didn't he? Probably didn't do him any good. And in 1900, we had in the Second Boer War, Imperial forces suffered their worst single-day loss of life on Bloody Sunday, the first day of the Battle of Paardeberg, or Paardeberg, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It occurred on the first day of that battle. A combined British-Canadian force of 6,000 finally trapped a group of approximately 5,000 Boer soldiers and some civilians under Piet Cronje, I think, never know how to pronounce his name, in a bend of the Modder River near Kimberley, having advanced from south of the Modder River on the 11th. The Boers defended a series of trenches on Paardeberg Hill. The Imperial commander, Kitchener, who was temporarily replacing the unwell Roberts, began the battle by ordering a charge straight at the Boer trenches. The land sloped down to the Boer positions and lacked any cover for 800 metres, 870 yards or more. The Highland Brigade and the 2nd Special Service Battalion, the Royal Canadian Regiment of Infantry, led the attack. See, you would see why in a minute he was replaced. The Boer soldiers withheld fire until the British soldiers were within 100-odd yards of them. The British were pinned, and the exchange of fire continued until nightfall, when the British withdrew. The Highlanders took almost 300 casualties. The Canadian losses were 18 dead and 60 wounded. Attacks elsewhere along the line resulted in a total 1,100 casualties with 200 killed, the worst single-day loss for the Imperial forces. After the first assault, Robert got out of his sick bed and retook command that evening. With the Boers trapped, he ordered the digging of trenches and a bombardment, which continued for 9 days. On the 27th of February, after a confused night attack, the surviving Boer soldiers surrendered, about 4,000 in total. A further 2,000 Imperial soldiers died or invalided at Paardeberg from illness, mostly due to drinking the water of the Modder River, downstream from where the Boers were throwing horse and cattle corpses killed by the artillery fire. There you go. And one last one. Oh, I've got a couple more. 1901, Winston Churchill made his maiden speech in the House of Commons. He'd been around for a long time before the Second World War.
I guess.
Yeah, that was his maiden speech. 1943, World War II, Goebbels delivers his Sportspalast speech, his famous Sportspalast speech, one of his most famous speeches, evidently. This was the first public admission that things weren't going too well, and it was to fight to the very end. So he called for total war to secure victory over the Allies and exhorted the British people, the German people, to continue war, even though it would be long and difficult, because, as he asserted, both Germany's survival and the survival of the non-Bolshevik Europe were at stake. So he knew the time was ticking on there with his desperate speech. Well, there we go. That's 18th of Feb.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. As usual, Ruff. Thank you so much.
It's all right.
for sharing
Enjoy
that.
it. Yeah.
So today we got a special episode of Jester's Jeopardy with Thomas. It's going to give us. What are you going to do, Thomas? Tell us what you're going to do.
Well, I was told that I could share a screen, but I don't know if that's possible.
Yes, you absolutely can. Down at the
okay,
bottom of
so
your little window, you're going to see where it says
present.
share screen.
Is that what it is?
Present.
And,
Click present.
and let's see. You have no
If you've got to have the
slides.
thing up already, yeah. Or no. So is it a
It'll be
window.
mute,
See, I have a
stop
PDF. I have
camera
a PDF.
settings. Okay.
So if I do a share screen,
Share screen. There you go.
okay. And then if I
And then you're going to choose. You're going to choose the screen. You can either choose a window, or you can choose.
Yep. Select window or screen.
Yep.
And so let's see if it allows me to do that. It does not appear to have that as an option. So if I do entire screen and then bring that up, then you will see it. Can you see it?
No. When you click on share screen, it's going to pop up another window, and you're going to select that.
Did it
and
show
you're gonna
that?
say share.
It would have shown.
If you've got it open in a different window, click the window tab.
Does
Oh,
that
there it
work?
goes. Here we go. Here we go. Yep.
Good.
There we go.
Okay.
Lovely.
So this is called What Is That? And
What is
those of you who
this?
have Mag
What is that?
23 might recognize that airplane actually. But the it starts easy.
What?
And
It's a
starts easy.
plane, Alistair.
so we'll go to page 2 with the start of this, and I'm scoring points. So let's see if we'll start with something that I think people might know what this is.
That's a hurricane.
Yeah, but what mark of hurricane is it?
Oh, you need to know what kind it is?
Okay, I mean, obviously, Ruff, I think you can answer what this is.
Ruff doesn't know. Ruff is.
So, but I
The
think
wings
everybody
are-
knows that.
That's supposed to be a Spitfire, but the wings look a little bit off. I don't know if it's just the focus.
It is a Spitfire at an angle. So now is when it gets difficult. So now you have the idea here. So,
Right.
Okay.
all right, what is this?
Russian plane.
This is a IL-2. I'm close, so aren't I? I'm close.
No.
I'm close.
And I have a simple and a complex hint for you, if you're stumped. It's not an illusion.
Is it LA5?
It's not an illusion. Is it a
You're
yak?
quite close. You're quite close.
Yak.
Quite close. It entered service after the LA5 in 1944, and it was a match for the best the Germans had.
LA5 FN.
No, after that.
After that.
It's one of only a handful of aircraft during World War II that shot down an Me-262.
Ooh.
Tweezer's sitting there with his James, isn't he? Looking it up. You know.
Yeah, he is. He's got his,
He's like that.
he's got his iPad out. Yeah, for sure. LA7, says Tim.
LA7, very, very good. So Tim gets a point. Tim gets a point.
That was an
This is
easy
the
one.
LA7.
Are you kidding us?
That was
Oh my
an
God.
easy one.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we'll go back to British then, so that everybody has an
That's
equal
a
shot.
fairy, isn't it? That's a fairy.
Oh, wow, Ruff is really good with his airplanes.
I can't remember what it is. A fairy. Fucking hell.
It was designed for the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm
Yeah.
for anti-submarine warfare.
Wow.
That is a single-engine twin propeller.
I know
airplane
it's a
powered
weird
by
thing.
the Armstrong Siddeley ASMD-8 double Mamba engine.
The double Mamba. The double
It
Mamba.
had 3,875 horsepower. Put that in perspective, the Spitfire Mark I had 1,030 horsepower.
Oh, that looks like it has a crew of quite a few people there too.
Well, went
Yeah, it
off
looks
to
like,
substance.
this
So
fellow Fred
One
has the
flight.
answer. Fred O'Sullivan says it's a Gannet, a fairy Gannet. That is
yes,
correct.
that's it. Very Gannet. Well done, Fred.
The Gannet.
So
Tweezer's got it in.
let's-
Tweezer's had it in there too.
obviously, this is such a beautiful airplane.
He had to get to the G's quick.
That is one of the fuggliest airplanes I've ever seen.
That's why I know it's
as bad as the A4. Like the A4 is also a horror.
So inspiring. So inspiring that the Russians had to do their own version.
Oh my God, that's even worse.
Oh my God, that is one ugly plane. Oh my God.
That's horrible. Oh my God.
Aerodynamics is out the window on that one.
The pilot sits over the engine so that he has a view down. And the reason is it's not an anti-submarine warfare aircraft. It's actually for ground attack. And
right, because I just talked about this, right? You got the nose of the aircraft in the way, so if you get rid of the nose of the aircraft, it's easier to see shit.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this, the Russians had this great idea, these wing-mounted high-caliber autocannons. It's not a flying turd. the wing-mounted autocannons could actually depress 23 degrees down angle so that the pilot could fly level over the battlefield without pointing the nose down and strafe targets below.
Wow, we talked about this. It's funny that I would bring this up and we would talk about
that's pretty good, yeah.
It's almost like I knew it was coming.
That is an ugly plane, though. I'll give you that.
That is. I have no idea what that is. Anyone in the chat? The London bus.
The thing is
looks much prettier than that.
ID Jester is quite interesting in this because he's managed to foreshadow everything. Earlier he mentioned, is that an illusion? This is indeed an illusion, an IL-20.
Oh, I was so close. I should get extra credit for that.
Not really. Wow. No, not really. You said it for the wrong. Anyway.
Wow.
So what we're going to do is we're going to
your skill is an illusion.
We're going to skip
the best YouTuber ever.
We're going to skip back to British aircraft and go to something that's a lot prettier to look at.
Oh,
no, I don't know that one.
Late 1930s, contemporary of the Spitfire. Note the triple tail.
All right. Yes, the triple tail.
4 engines. The cruise speed, I can guarantee nobody would guess the cruise speed of this aircraft.
33 miles an hour.
He's very, very close.
Big engines. I bet you. Is it the Hayford?
No, that's a very, very interesting answer. But yeah, this aircraft, the design cruise speed was 38 knots, or about 45 miles per hour.
Oh, there you go. It wasn't far wrong.
It's still not too bad. Pretty close.
33.3 says Mike.
For 6 hours at night, designed to shadow fleets at sea.
And
so it was powered by 4 130 horsepower Popejoy Niagara 5 7-cylinder radial engines.
So it's not made by the same company as Spitfire, is that what you're saying?
No,
not a Supermarine. All right.
I think this one is.
They probably went out of business after this, didn't
they? It's a Plymouth, right? It's a Plymouth, like an early Plymouth, right?
No.
No.
Are you trying to say Blenheim?
What is it, Thomas?
This is the Airspeed AS-39 Fleet Shadower. And by 1941, it was retired because radar had been invented, including airborne radar.
So it's purely functional. So it wasn't, it wasn't built for its looks. It's purely functional.
Purely functional. The observer sat in the nose with the wraparound windows, and the pilot sat above to fly it, and a radio operator sat behind the pilot to send messages to the Royal Navy.
I bet, though, when that came out, when did it come out? 1933?
39, I think it was.
39?
39 is when really, yes.
I bet that they still come out and went, wow, look at that. That's so modern looking. Wow, look, I can't wait to get in that.
Wow. We are never going to
Okay,
need
now-
something more advanced than this thing.
This is beautiful. And then the Spitfire came out. Right.
Yep, at 38 knots. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we have only two more. This will be the second to the last. Some people might recognize this one, actually. I expect they will.
It's a glider is what it is.
There's an engine there on top.
No, the engine's on the top of the wing. Look.
Wow. That is, look at that. They mounted the engine above the wings. That is crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. No.
This aircraft was designed to be airdropped. It packs into
Okay.
a 1.25 square meter case.
I can see that.
It's inflatable.
What?
What? Wow.
So a
I'm surprised
1.25 meter square, case, and you'd airdrop it behind enemy lines to a downed pilot.
Oh, it's a rescue plane.
Ah, okay. So they can just.
That was the design.
What?
What do they do? Get a foot pump. Oh, it's all right. We've got a foot pump. Okay, right. Okay.
There's one problem, a reason why the military didn't continue with the program. It only takes one bullet to pop the airplane.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
I love that. I love that comment. It only takes one bullet to pop the airplane. well,
That's funny.
no, they're just ahead of themselves with the balloons.
The manufacturer's
Wow.
name is on the side underneath the cockpit.
Goodyear, yeah.
Goodyear.
It's an ultralight. Yeah, that's what it
The
looks like.
Goodyear inflato plane. Edward Lassa has it. Yep. It's called the Goodyear GA 447 inflato plane. And it was
Inflato plane.
canceled
Wow.
in 1970.
Wow. Edward is the man. I'm telling
Yeah,
you.
and
Edward.
mind you, it does what it says, doesn't it? What is it? It's an inflato plane. What does that mean? What is all that about then? It's in the clue. The clue is that it's an inflator plane.
Could you imagine somebody like, damn, I got shot down, I survived, and now they're gonna drop this to me? You gotta be kidding me. Oh my god.
In a hardened case, yeah, that you pop open and the plane inflates itself.
Oh,
So, yeah. And now the final aircraft.
Oh, that's the reversed alien technology. From
Capable
Wright
of
Patterson.
1,500 mile per hour flight. Able to reverse directions rapidly.
I told
Designed
you,
to carry a bazooka in combat for ground attack.
reversed alien technology. It's reversed
Now, I'm
alien
not going to
technology.
say that. The
Yeah.
designer's name was Jack Frost. And
was he a bit on the
He
cold
joined
side? He only worked during the winter months. Is that right?
he joined the company in 1947, and coincidentally, the
Combat
same year
Roomba.
of the event, Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, Roswell. Yeah, the same year. Hello. By the way, I just so everybody knows, I'm a huge Ancient Aliens fan, so this probably fed into that. So
Yeah. But then
I
why
like
would
the
aliens-
combat Roomba.
Why would aliens use a jet engine? They'd have something far more advanced, wouldn't
It's
they?
just reverse technology, so we had to use what we have. We don't have their technology. We just found parts of it.
Correct.
But seriously, over 1,000 miles an hour,
1,500. Yeah.
1,500
Wow.
miles an hour. Well, it's
That was the
quite
design.
aero. This would fit on the. It should say United Space Force.
Yeah, but the thing is, Tony, it was only that big.
That's too
If
funny.
that was the serious question, Thomas, if that did what it did and could reverse very quickly and go over 1,000 miles an hour, what stopped it going into production?
It wasn't practical, actually.
It looked like it
None
could
of it
reverse
made sense.
takeoff and landing.
There
Right,
were a lot
when
of
are you going to
we
need a
didn't
plane
have-
to go
those days
one
we
way
didn't
and then
have
turn around and go the other way?
flight controls and such to manage it at all different flight regimes. There were a lot of issues with it in its design.
I still like the combat Roomba. I think that's a good one. The curling plane by Edward Lassell. That fits that one.
So what was it actually called, Thomas? What was it actually called?
Say again?
What was
This
it
was
actually
actually
called?
designed by Avro Canada. It's the VZ9 Avro car.
The Avro car.
Ooh.
Yes, and I'm surprised nobody knows this. This is actually one of the most famous Avro Canada designs there is. So,
Is it harder to
But
shoot
that's
down
it.
than a
Yeah,
balloon?
Bird said, is it harder to shoot down than a balloon?
very unstable. Yes. So that was
very unstable.
Yeah, if it was Canadian, it's the Tim Hortons Destroyer. That
Tim Hortons.
Oh my god.
I
Well,
like
that
that.
was-
That's good.
That was great,
That was
Thomas.
fun.
You did a
Yeah.
we're gonna have our guests that come
Thanks, Paul.
on are gonna have to live up to your quality now.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to come on with games.
Oh
ready
crap!
To
We're
go.
not getting anybody else on
Any
now.
guests that come on from now on have got to have a speciality, an expertise in something, like
right.
airplanes or tanks.
Well,
or,
I was going to say, here's the thing. Jester, you kept calling him an expert. He's the expert. But he said at the beginning of the show that even historians are getting things wrong. So, and they're experts. So it's like, he can say what he wants and we think he's an expert, but does that mean he's right?
If he
It's like-
agrees with me, then he's right. So
Oh, there we go. There I know.
It's like just because a teacher
That's
says it
the very
doesn't mean
definition.
it's right.
right.
I believe that's the Putin,
a good
Putin
philosophy
definition
there,
of right
Tony.
and wrong.
He's teaching our youngsters.
Yeah.
I might
'cause
not
I
be
say it
telling you the truth, but I'm going to tell you what's in their books.
At the moment.
At the moment, they might change everything in a couple years from now.
Actually, that could happen if they find new stuff. That's why I always say history is never static because they find new evidence all the time.
It's like yogurt, Tony, isn't it? It's a living culture.
That was bad. That was horrible.
Can you believe you put up with this nonsense, Thomas? Wow. All right, here's the serious question. These two, ignore those two yahoos, right? Let's talk serious, Thomas. Why the hell is Tally Ho $10 more than your new game? Huh? What's up with that?
Number of
Tally Ho
pages
is
in the book.
$34.95, and your MG 26 is it's like $24.95. So why is it $10 more?
It's the number of pages in the book and how Amazon charges for production. And that's
Screw
a
Amazon,
lesson I
man.
learned with my
Come
first
on.
published. Yeah.
I can answer this one,
Um,
Thomas. Tally Ho, 116 pages. Mag 23, 92. I rest my
So
case.
you're paying $10 more for like 12
You're
pages? Oh my
Yeah,
You're
dollar
paying
page.
I paid-
Thomas.
Yep. There's like a base charge and then a cost per page, and it ramps up pretty quickly, as I've discovered.
Yeah.
The hard way. So I'm,
Hey,
I'm actually-
Jester, Mike's got a not a good thing. Now, Thomas, since you are, born and bred U.S., did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did.
Okay. Did you
The
have
following
a
morning.
did you have a dog in the fight, or were you bored like me?
Yeah, the Green Bay Packers was pretty much it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you didn't have a dog in the fight.
So
So,
I offered last week for my part of the show. I said if anyone can get the Super Bowl correctly, I would give you a free game. I've got tons of games. I'm ready to give them away. Guess what? None of our people are smart enough to get the right answer.
yeah,
Not a single one of them.
Berticelli did.
No, he didn't. He was wrong. He missed it by 1 point.
Well, he's the nearest then, isn't he?
Well, he was close, but we don't give games away for being close.
What?
I
Close
mean, good Lord. You either be
Hey,
right
we give
or
trophies
wrong.
away for participation.
yeah.
No, we do not give games away for participation. You either
Close
get
to
it
the
right.
cigar, is that what you're saying?
you're
Poor old
out.
Mike?
I have no sympathy for you. You're either right or you're wrong. Bertajelli was wrong, like the rest of these people.
Missed it by one. Yeah, missed it by one. Oh, yeah. I thought he got it right. I thought he had.
But Mike, one of the top game designers, you know, in our industry and supporter of the channel and our friend, and close but no cigar.
No sympathy. You're either right or you're wrong.
It's not horseshoes. It's not horseshoes, and we weren't throwing grenades. So
right, exactly, you missed it. Do better next time.
Nerd Workshop. Actually, you were wrong. Nerd Workshop said it was the refs, and they actually did win the game. So, actually, a hold is a hold. A hold is a hold, whether it's in the first minute or the last minute of the game. It doesn't matter. Anybody that says
horseshoes, get it right. If you got it honestly, right, I would have sent you a free game. I always hate in hockey when the refs swallow the whistle for the last 5 minutes, but they've been calling it tight the entire game. If it's a penalty in the first minute, it's a penalty in the last minute. I don't care if it's game 7 of the freaking Stanley Cup. You play the game by the rules.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm glad Mike didn't win because the game he would have won was a copy of Tank Duel.
Donated by him. Thomas, I tell you, two of these knuckleheads that I put up with, I am looking for some new co-hosts.
We're not very professional. I'm sorry, Thomas. We tend to have
Ruff he's got ticker problems now, so he might not be around too much longer.
Yes, but he's potentially royal, so you got to be careful about that.
That's true.
Yeah,
I'm the most expendable. But
so you were saying that historians often get it wrong.
Yeah,
and this leads me to an announcement that I have, which is that the next game I'm working on, which will be using the Tally-Ho system, but will be completely different yet again, is about the 82nd Airborne at D-Day.
Really? And so talk to us about the 82nd Airborne. What do we know?
It's about Lafayette Bridge and the Causeway. And if you're not familiar with that, you probably should be. You've probably heard of Pegasus Bridge, yes?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Everybody's heard of Pegasus Bridge. Lafayette Bridge was the same thing, but for the Americans. It was, southwest of Utah Beach, and it had to be seized and it had to be held. And the 82nd Airborne was able to do that, but it took 4 days of intense fighting of an airborne unit against German tanks and artillery. And they suffered immense casualties. And then in the breakout past that, this is a good example. What brought that to mind for me was that historians often get it wrong. One of the things was that the Germans had greater forces west of Lafayette Bridge at this little town. And the airborne guys were going there, and they were outnumbered, but they were going to attack the town anyway. And that morning, when they got to the edge of the town, still out of sight, there was a French jackrabbit in the field. And this was like an American-sized jackrabbit, not some little European, kind with tiny ears. And this jackrabbit was huge, and it took one look at the soldiers, and the soldiers laughed, and one of them picked up his gun and took a shot at it. And the rabbit took off. And the entire airborne division was blazing away with everything they had, trying to shoot this rabbit. And it dodged and zigged and it zagged and it jumped and it stopped and it reversed and it went forward and it went all the way across the field into a hole in the opposite hedgerow. The most amazing jackrabbit escape in history under a volley of fire that just was unending and intense, the fastest the soldiers had ever fired. Well, over the hill, about a mile away, was the entire German army dug in at this village, and they heard all this shooting. And they thought, oh my God, these Americans, they've just engaged a unit, and now they can hear them laughing. They're not even taking casualties. We better pull out. And so they did not. Many of them pulled out of their positions and abandoned the village. And thus the 82nd Airborne won on June 12th, 6 days after D-Day, heading west out of Lafayette Bridge because of a jackrabbit.
Wow.
Crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
That is an amazing story.
And
So
that's how war works.
this new game is going to be land-based then, I'm taking it?
Yep. Well, it begins with the parachute and glider assault. Yep. Okay. Airborne drop with the 82nd Airborne. And then you have to take and hold the bridge and then press across it. It'll be area movement. Very interesting.
The jackrabbit in the book.
The jackrabbit is not. We might add the jackrabbit in the book, but
you got to throw a counter in there. You got to throw a counter in there. Yeah, you got to have a counter at least in there.
Come on. When are we expecting?
Mitch has done it. Mitch has done it with the Next War series. He did a whale threat counter because I don't know if you remember seeing that the Russians attached something to a whale. So when he was designing the game at that point in time, yeah, he actually threw a whale threat counter in there just because.
And people are going, "What do you use this for, Mitch? What's this for?" Can't find it in the rules.
So many people didn't get it. We literally had the link, like BGG, the link to the article.
That beluga is up here in Norway, it's not very far from it.
When are we expecting this new game, Thomas? This year? Next year?
My target date is the end of March. It's already well underway.
Wow. So
you've been working on this got quite a few that are underway.
I tell you what, if you look in the front of the books, he's got a half a page worth of stuff that's coming out. There's like,
wow, you're a busy guy, Thomas. Yeah. You're a busy guy. Guys, we're going to wrap up here in about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions for Thomas about his games, about his books, his designs, his life, whatever, asking the questions down in the comments section. We got about 10 minutes before we got to start wrapping things up here already. Can you believe it's been almost 2 hours?
Yeah, it's just crazy. And as Gareth said, you call them jackrabbits, we'll call them hares over here, and they're big buggers.
Oh, it sounds like it was a Flemish giant. Like, have you seen those things? They're like huge.
They're rabbits, though.
They're like,
I know they're big. They're big.
Yeah. That's still funny. I love hearing those stories.
Yeah, I know.
Those
stories
right?
Crack me up. Yeah. It's like, Thomas. I mean, it's early, right? It's only February 18th, right? But so far, I'm not saying anything yet. But so far, you might be guest of the year so far. So I'm just saying, there's lots of look up to coming up.
We're not saying much. The trust we've had on terrible.
Now, you had mentioned that you have some logbook possibly in development. So for like the Mag 23 system, how's that going? Soon? Do you want me to test it out? You can email me the PDFs. I'll test them out for you.
That one is probably also about 4 to 5 weeks away. Because it won't just be the pages of a logbook to write in.
Okay.
It'll be on cheaper paper, so it'll be more affordable, even though it has more pages. Amazon is weird that way. And I'm including some marine logbooks from Guadalcanal in it.
Cool.
So
it's like
the content is
as well. So.
Yeah, and a photo gallery of snapshots and such.
So, that'll be cool. That'll be interesting to see. So,
best place to visit in Sweden. We're coming to visit, Thomas. Where are we going? Where are you taking us?
You're welcome anytime. I would highly recommend. Of course, Stockholm is wonderful, but also in the south here, around Easter, what we call the Art Week. Yeah, the art for the whole Easter week. There's about 200 or 300 artist studios that are open in the south of Sweden, in what's called Österlen. And you just spend days going from studio to studio to studio, seeing just amazing work. There's fantastic artists here. It's a wonderful country. Actually, I highly recommend Sweden for anybody. Wonderful place. Okay. Mikael Carlson's aerodrome. Weirdest plane I've ever flown. Weirdest. Probably the C5B Galaxy. It's in order to get that down off of altitude, you take the inner two engines and you go into thrust reverser on them, and that's how you come down from altitude, because it's got such a high lift wing. You're never getting it down.
It'll stay out there forever if you don't.
Well, aviation is quite, it's actually the perfect art. We've never left one up there. So.
Oh, Thomas, I'm telling you, you keep it going. You're going to be guest host of the year 2023. Wow. I'm telling you.
For that, but I think we're only at the beginning of the year. And honestly, I'm really stunned that you would have me on. I'm in a way a beginning game designer. I've been designing games all my life, but in terms of publishing them, I'm a beginning game designer, and so I'm coming at from the side of a historian and a pilot. So I'm bringing that to the table as my forte, but I'm very deeply impressed by the game designers that I've seen on in the war room. I think it's really extraordinary people. And I've learned a lot by listening to what they have to say, and really good people. I'm very impressed with this community.
Great to hear. That's what we're trying to do, share a little bit of knowledge and get people. We get on some and they talk, and hopefully what you're saying is going to inspire maybe 10 other people. So who knows?
I just want them on to give free games.
Next year, we're going to get on Bill McGillicuddy, and Bill's going to be coming on talking about how he watched your show and watched Thomas talk about making book games. And so he started doing it, and now he's got like 20 games out there. So who knows what would happen in a year.
Yeah. It's what I think what's also neat about the book games, and Thomas, I think you kind of agree with this, is it's kind of got the David Thompson approach to it. You can pick the weirdest things, the most unknown things, and you can make, as long as you make a good game, you can make a good game out of it and not have to worry about getting, somebody that may not understand or get the gist. Like, you can get it out there, and then you can, get your name out there. It's what YouTube has done with musicians, is made them more easily accessible to the public. There's several musicians I follow that are not mainstream musicians, but they play really good. I think the book game kind of, yeah. I found this guy named Ruff, but I ignored him anyways. But I think it's really cool that you're able to take something that you're interested in, make a good game out of it, and get it out to everybody nowadays. That is just awesome, because you can, all these new designers, like you said, you're a new designer, like a more of a published designer as a new one. You actually get to put it out there and find out, hey, is it really good? And so far, everything's gone really well. So that's really cool, really interesting. I just real quick, I met so the Heisman, the guy that the Heisman's named after, I met his nephew. His nephew wrote an autobiography about him, and I got the book and everything. But he was coaching because he coached Georgia State, and he was going up against some like Alabama or somebody that's really big that was just going to run him over. He says, but you learn, he's like, you don't know what's going to happen until you get it out there. So you could say, well, I'm not going to play them because they're way above our level, and thinking about that. But you don't know how good you are until you put it out there. Now, you may suck at it, but you don't know. And what I like about this, Thomas, is that so far, great stuff. And I'm not seeing that it would ever end, because you have that thought process, and generally multiple games is good. So keep up the good work on that. Keep up the design on that. Keep putting them out there, and who knows what's going to happen on that.
Yeah, to say it's all about support. It's all about support, and it's nothing to do with how big or how small you are. You're one of us, and it's like, you're another weirdie like the rest of us. So who likes their war games? But having seen the book games are new to me. The first time I saw a book game was when you sent me Tally Ho, and I wasn't interested in the other ones. They didn't appeal to me. And you said, can you send it? Yeah, I'll have a look. And I looked through it, and I thought, if this is what book games are like, there's so much information in here and so much stuff that adds to the narrative. that sometimes you don't get in a box game, because it's, you know, you might get a 20-page rule book and some designer notes and a little bit of history, but the whole book is just history. Everything, even the tables have got stuff like in Mag 23, you've got the names of the blooming observers, depending on whether it's the sea-based or air-based observers. So you
love the history part of it. Yeah, love it.
I mean, I'm not just saying it, you know, but I'm impressed. And if you haven't had a look at them, peeps in the chat, I've done the open the book for Tally Ho, and there'll be one for Mag 23. If you're at all interested, just have a look at them and see what you think. Yes, there's a little bit of printing with Tally Ho. Don't need it for Mag 23, but I would recommend it, because once you've printed them and laminated them, that's it, done. So, and they add to the narrative. So, yeah, very impressed. My first good job, it was you sending me a war book game rather than somebody else, and I'd have gone, There you go.
Thomas.
Yes, sir.
How do people get in touch with you? Do you have I mean, you have the website, right? How else would they get in touch with you? Let's say they want to get in touch with you. How do they get in touch with you? You got social media handles. What's going on, Thomas? Talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, you know, on my email, of course, is, you know, TC Tango Charlie, in other words, TC at historicwings.com, or T Van Hare at historicwings.com. And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Historic Wings is on Twitter, on Instagram. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/ @ historic with a capital H, wings with a capital W. And you can find my YouTube channel. There's a lot of interesting YouTube videos there, some very surprising ones. There's one about the Queen, even, in honor of Ruff.
I have had a look, Thomas. I have had a look. Yeah.
And all the videos are designed to introduce a part of history that maybe you weren't familiar with, like the first woman combat pilot.
Yeah, yeah.
Alan says he's just ordered them, and looking forward to playing with them. So,
thank you.
So what is coming up? I know we briefly kind of talked about them, but what are your projects coming up in the next 6 months? What do we got coming up? What can we look forward to?
Right now on the table is the La Fière, which is the 82nd Airborne in Normandy, which is a very interesting game, quite different. There's 2 surprises that I haven't listed on the front of the book.
Okay,
all right.
And of course, you want to share them with us.
Yeah, world exclusive.
Yeah,
Thank
I won't
you.
be sharing that one. I won't be sharing that one.
Wow! You just
And
Yeah, he's done it now. He's done it now.
guest of the year now, Thomas. I'm telling you,
yeah,
disappointment.
and there's a game that's listed in there called the working title is Arorozhvizhka, but it is not actually the title, which is about drone warfare in Ukraine.
Ooh.
And in the Ukraine war.
Okay.
And that's quite an interesting game. And I'm doing a series. I'm going to be doing 2 different kinds of books because of Amazon's pricing issues, which have really hit me hard. Because if the book is, you know, what my goal was is to combine the best parts of a book, which is the information, with the best parts of a game, which is a different way to learn history by playing it. And so a book-based game creates that kind of a different way to do that. There's a different metaphor there. But as it turns out, if you're in the 120-page range, your prices are very high for the quality of paper you need. So I'm going to be doing a series of short, like 50-page and 60-page, high-intensity games as well that are book-based. So I'm going to be doing in between the 100-page, which would be the new target range, instead of 124 is what Amazon says it is, even if it's a less than that. They count 124. I'll be doing 100-page or less, and then a series that are 50-page. So I'll be alternating between the 2. Okay. So the 50-page one should be much more affordable. That seems to be the cutoff. 50 to 60 pages, it allows you to bring the price down.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good.
Well, I'll tell you the price for even Mag 23. I'm sorry, but that's what you get in that book is worth every penny, even at full price. So it's really really worth it. So definitely go for it, guys. It's really really good.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole
Yeah, and
idea
if
here
you
was to
were-
create the equivalent of a boxed game in a book that is much more affordable. And, because a box game these days is anywhere from 50, 70, even $100.
And look
here
how
in
much
Europe,
space they take up, Thomas. Look at that. Look at that.
6 inches of your shelf is about 4 years of my work, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Put your whole portfolio on one of them shelves, couldn't I? Yeah.
Rough, Tony, what do we got coming up on your guys' channels? Are we going to actually do anything this week? Or
I've done stuff this week. What are you talking about? You've don't watch what I do.
Okay.
I'm doing.
All right. Don't get so defensive.
Well, I think I could. I'm doing the second scenario for Task Force. This is the solo learning tutorials. Not sure if I'll be able to do a full 2-player one because there is hidden information. I might be able to get around it by tweaking some of the counters because you chip pull the counters and the opponent pulls the counters to look when you're looking at their task forces because there's dummies out there. They will pull the chip pull, and if it's a certain one, and you said I'm searching that counter there, and they get a certain counter, they can tell you the opposite of what it actually is if it's an actual task force to give you misinformation. And to do that solo, I'll have to either forget about them or come up with a different ideas. But that's in the future. So that's the second part of that. We got Thomas's Open the Book, Mag 23 next week. And playing the war game. No, I'm playing it's Final Girl there, in case you're wondering what that is. It's Final Girl, which is great fun. And then after those two, we'll probably in the next sort of few weeks, probably moving on to Point Blank.
All right. Hey, what about you, Tony? What you got coming on?
Well, I was going to play Banish the Snakes, which I probably will because it's all set up. So I'll save it. I'll record it, play it, and then just release it like at the end of the week. So that way I'm not stealing your thunder. Chester.
I'll wait till everybody's done theirs and they'll do mine.
Well, there's not that many playthroughs out there. So
there's zero. That's the problem.
Yeah. So, but then I'm getting this to the table. This looked really good. So that'll get to the table. So those two pretty much should take care of the week for me.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to be playing, as you can see here, Banish the Snakes tonight here on the channel.
It looks a cracking little game, actually.
It looks good. The one thing I will say, what I can say is that the strategy that I've figured out is you got to take out the druids. Like
you got to get rid of the druids.
You got to get rid of the druids.
You can build your churches then, and then you're off.
Yeah.
With them dumb pagans.
Yep, it's going to be a thing. Anyways, and then we will not be having Herman on this week. He's going to be going to PressCon this coming week, so we'll be doing something else instead. I'm not sure. It just depends on what we're doing. And Thomas, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all your time and your effort
really
and
good.
creating your documents. For us, that was really interesting, and
that was fun. Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people watching this later on, and they're going to check that out, and they're going to be like, "Wow, look at these planes!" So that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And again, it's such a wonderful community, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, and guys, if you do end up playing Tally Ho or Mag 23, and you post them over in the Facebook group and the ComSim World group, that'd be awesome. So we can all experience what you're doing with the game. That'd be great. And I know Thomas is over there as well, and you can, if you have any questions, I'm sure he'll be there to answer anything for you guys. Everybody, thank you so much for coming out this week. We do appreciate it. Thomas, again, a big shout out, a big thank you to Historic Wings. Go to his website, go get his games on Amazon. They're going to be well worth your time and effort. I'm telling you. I'm going to be picking them up after the show today. Like I said, the only reason I hadn't was because I didn't know you all were getting them, and I didn't want to put the pressure on Thomas to be like showing up with the game. And yeah, so I wanted to keep it low key. But now I'm going to order them. Right?
I think
you'll
you'll
and
enjoy.
then I'm going to
it.
have a rant on them. There
No,
better not
no.
be any misspellings, Thomas.
That's my nightmare right there. The typos. I swear to God, every time I open the book, even now after publication, I'm like, there's a typo. I can't believe this. I have read that book 60 times.
How did that happen?
It has been through every spell check and software designed on the planet, and they're still in there. It's
Mike Berticelli says it's the best and worst day of your life is when a game gets released.
Yeah. All the crud that comes with it. But no, Jester, if you get them, I think it would be a better experience than the one maybe you've just had with another one.
I think. I would like to compare. That's why I'm actually interested is to show these do this does this, and kind of compare so people out there can make wise decisions. Thomas, thank you all.
Thank you
for coming out, and we will see everybody next week. Thomas, just don't go anywhere yet, and we'll see everybody next week. Until then, my friends, take care of yourselves, and thanks for coming out and supporting the show.
Thank you, guys. Mwah.
Thank you.